It was an interesting day, a very interesting day at the committee hearing tonight. Variance committee hearing for the In-N-Out store on Lebanon Street in Ward 6. It was pretty intense seeing the lawyers chit-chat and talk all the legalese, arguing the case for reopening the store. I was pretty impressed. The facts were laid out, and I think the store owner couldn't have gotten better representation. I won't chat for too long. I'll let the video do the talking. At one point, I was asked to go up and say something, so I interjected a little something to help on the positive side, the pro side of opening the store. What I wasn't prepared for was, I think I was a little shocked when a former ward councilor for Ward 6 jumped in with a letter arguing vehemently against reopening the corner store on Lebanon Street in Malden. It was pretty interesting, a pretty wild set of arguments, slapping a lot of legalese and techno jargon around. And if I recall correctly, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, our former Ward 6 councilor, I believe, actually suggested some sort of apartment building on the lot instead of reopening the In-N-Out store. I don't know how anybody else in the senior center felt, but I felt like, huh? Really? He's advocating somehow for more apartment buildings in Malden, in Ward 6? It was wild. But you know what? Hopefully things will turn out okay. Hopefully the store will reopen soon, and we can all get back to hanging out with a wonderful neighborhood. Let's check the video. Just the facts. Just the facts.
There's a latitude in the 2-year period when that would start. I mean, the property was basically out of his control from 2014 until, not through any reasons other than, personal reasons that he had. And then it was just, he wasn't allowed to open it even though he had the intent to do it. Well, close up.
Any other comments from the board or questions? If not, well, if Mr. McDonald's done, we'll open up to the public. Thank you. We have a number of folks that have written in letters, and I know there's a number of folks here that want to speak, so why don't I read out letters? If someone's here who's also written in, totally up to yourself if you still want to come up and speak. So let me start with the letters that came in support of this board granting a variance. So we did receive from Jane Roby of 58 Crescent Lane. Would Jane be with us this evening?
Yes.
Okay, so I could read your letter, or you can come up when we bring folks up. Would you?
You could read the letter. That's
okay. Okay. So she's writing to support the granting of the variance. The store serves many immediate needs in the neighborhood. It is in a way the focal point of this section of Maplewood Heights because of its location at the intersection of Lebanon Street and Swains Pond Ave, where the road turns sharply northwest, and because it's a turnaround point and waiting area for the 106 bus. The store brings life to the corner. Having an empty storefront for so long gives the impression of the neighborhood in decline, which it is not. Some may argue that the neighborhood doesn't need the in and out because it's easy to drive to the convenience stores in Maplewood Square. But those stores are not at a convenient walking distance from us. Not everyone wants or needs to get in to their car to buy a quart of milk or paper. The neighborhood needs its own store. Mr. Hussein has kept up the building nicely and has agreed to keep the store environs clean of disposed lottery tickets and other trash. I used to wait for the bus every day when the in and out was open previously and noticed very little, if any, trash in front of the store. And again, that is Brent and Jane Road from Crescent Lane. And we also had Miss Carol Wallace Orr. And you want to come up, Carol? You want me to read it? Okay. So as a neighborhood resident, I, along with almost everyone else in the area, am in favor of reopening the in and out. The objections I heard from a few people at the open meeting at the site last month seemed largely irrelevant. For example, about the zone speed over which the convenience store has no control. Another objection concerned an increase in trash in the area. Mr. Hussein stated that he would have 2 employees at work in the store, one of whom would be responsible for policing the area to dispose of trash. There is indeed a fair amount of trash on Malden's streets, most of which can be blamed on the unusually wicked wind, which knocks over trash cans and blows the contents all over the place. It's nice to know that, unlike many other residents, Mr. Hussein would take responsibility for keeping his property in the surrounding area picked up. In my opinion, Mr. Hussein is honest and responsible, and our neighborhood would benefit from having his store reopened. Carol Orr on Crescent Lane. I think that's the extent of the information that came in. I do have some in opposition, but we're going to continue on with folks that want to support. And so anyone who would like to speak? Mr. Kamel?
David Kamel, 35 Williams Street, Ward 6 Council. So I will try to keep it short. I don't want to be redundant. A lot of what I wanted to say was already covered by the attorney. But I do want to ask one thing. I spoke with Commissioner Miller today, and I just want to start, if you don't mind, I just want to read a little excerpt from 700.115. So this is the whole thing, this is just an excerpt from it. When an application is filed regarding a non-conforming building, structure, or use where the building is currently vacant or the use is inactive, this period will be determined by the Board of Appeal per petition filed in accordance with the provisions of section 800.4.1.3. And so, and I don't know if you have the material directly from the building commissioner in front of you, but he didn't characterize it as a denial. He actually said, he referenced this section and said, it's you, it's not him. He said he would only grant the application if he could absolutely confirm, you know, that say that he knew something was open a month ago and it was just reopening. He said he would tell anybody applying when he sees that it is inactive, that in any case that he wasn't dealt, he would just refer it to you. So he's not, again, this is from my discussion with him on the phone today, did not necessarily determine that it was a denial. He is deferring it to the Board of Appeals per this ordinance. So that's the way he explained it to me today. So I don't know if you have something in the file that might mirror.
Not the characterization from the conversation.
I have the ordinance right here.
No, but
right.
You're talking about his interpretation.
Yeah, just his interpretation. And he says that he would have been here tonight. He teaches the class.
Right. No,
yeah. So there's two other things I wanted. So that was ability. I just wanted to cover that real quick. The neighborhood impact. I think the letter from the letters you read really cover a lot of what the neighborhood feels. And we've heard that no other use is going to be really possible there. Anything that would happen would have to come here for variances, for dimensional controls. So any which way it's going to be in control of, the folks here are going to be in control of that decimeters. And so I'll never say never, but it's going to be quite a long time before anything besides an appeal or variance can affect that. I don't see the council or the planning board making any provisions that are going to allow for a lot size that small to be used for anything. So, I think this is one of the small number of areas in the city that has an unintended consequence. I think there's a handful, and I don't think this would set a precedent to have you interpret that because it was out of his control, that it's not the same. It's not the same situation as another business that just wasn't open and they closed it down for no discernible reason. And I would just say many more people that I've spoken to, there are some in opposition, but many more that I've spoken to are in favor of it. And besides my one-on-one conversations, I think anybody you talk to from that meeting that night would say the same thing, that there was just more support for it to be open. Hopefully we'll hear some folks tonight. And the conditions that were already covered, I'll just go over them again. Minimum of 3 times daily to pick up the litter. Per suggestion of the Malden PD, the video system that also operates has a nighttime operation. And then the petitioner agrees not to seek a beer and wine license. That was a big deal for a lot of the neighbors, so the petitioners agreed not to do that. So I would ask for you to allow this to open. Thank you.
Anyone else to speak in favor of the variance being granted? Just if you would, your name and address for the record that we maintain.
My name's Gordon Doherty. I live at 477 London Street, directly abutting the bus terminal and then the property in question. When it was open as a convenience store, there were people there, they maintained the property, trash was collected on a regular basis. There was activity there. Since it's been gone, people throw garbage behind the building. There's been a rat problem because nobody has been around to maintain the place because there's no activity there. I think it's detrimental to the neighborhood not to have something there, because if he isn't there, he can't sell the place because nobody's going to buy it unless they can do something with it, which means it's not going to be maintained, which is going to become an eyesore in the neighborhood. And I think that having him back there would boost the maintaining area, along with, I have to occasionally call the MBTA because their property gets out of control. And they have to come and maintenance it, because they don't pay attention to it unless I call them. But with him in the building, he maintains his property. They come by more often because they have an obligation to keep their side of it clean too. So I think that would be a plus in that area. Thank you for your time.
Did you say you were at 474?
77.
Okay, yep. So we are here. You got the T lot right next to you.
Yes.
That elevation around.
Yep.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else to speak in favor?
Hi, Councilor Barbara Murphy, 28 Forest Street, Malden, Massachusetts. This is one of those situations where you kind of have a divided group, some for, some against. We'd like to go on record as saying that a number of months ago, I was at the planning board when there was a petition to change it was a joint ordinance planning meeting to change this particular area from Residence A to Residence C. I spoke vehemently against that because that would have been detrimental to the neighborhood. Because the only way for this particular property to actually be viable again is to either go into residence C, where an in-and-out convenience or convenience store would be allowed, but would allow potential development of a neighborhood with apartment buildings, which is not what I wanted to see. My goal as a city councilor is and always will be to protect the neighborhoods. So trying to change the zoning was not something that I could actually ever get behind. And there were a number of other people who spoke that evening against that also. So after that happened, now we're left with a building. A building that's vacant, similar to McFadden Manor, which I dealt with for a number of years. What do you do with a vacant building? People will say to you, I'd like to see a park there. And I would have loved to have seen a park on the McFadden Manor property. Love to see a pocket park down there. But it's not something that's viable in today's economy. It's not something that the city can afford. It's not something that's going to happen. So now you have to stop and think, what do we do with this? As you've heard tonight, it is an undersized piece of property for a home. 7,500 square feet is the minimum requirement these days to be able to build a single-family home. And even if you got a variance, who would want to build a home where the MATV had a right-of-way behind their building? So that has not been raised either. So that's another impediment to what do we do with this building. The night of the meeting, as I said, there were people there for, there were people there against. And I did say to the people against, what bothers you? What would make you maybe not happy about this opening, but what would make it less impactful to you should the store open? And out of that discussion came basically the issues that we heard tonight that were brought up by Attorney McDonald and also reiterated by Ward 6 Councilor Kamel. And it is the fact the trash was a huge problem. Okay, the trash is a problem today because they're not open also, but because of Keno, as we all know, nips, things like that, you know, trash does accumulate. The owner has agreed to do, I think, quite a bit of trash control. There was many years ago, the owner did go for a beer and wine license. There was a petition that was signed by over, I believe, I'm going to say 100, and I think Bill will probably, I think over 100 people. They did not want to see a beer and wine license. They did not want to see any liquor at that store. So that was actually shot down at the liquor board. The owner has agreed not to ask for a beer and wine or a liquor license moving forward. Security is a huge issue. He has agreed to have in and outside security cameras, keep a DVD that will be accessible to the police department. So now we come to a decision. What do you do? Do you leave this as a vacant piece of property that really has no future? Okay, and aside from that, probably impacts the livelihood of the actual individual who owns it? Or do we find a way to make this a vibrant, well-run store that benefits the neighborhood? I am here to say that, you know, having looked at, could a daycare go there? Could a church go there? I went through the same thing with McFadden Manor. What is the least detrimental impact to the neighborhood? A vacant store, a daycare, a church, or a vibrant variety store that's going to serve the needs of the neighborhood. I would say that I am in favor of the store reopening. I know that I probably have a few constituents behind me who aren't going to vote for me because I'm saying this, but I do believe that in the best interest of the city of Malden and the neighborhood, that is the best use for this particular piece of property. So thank you.
Councilor, 2 questions.
Yes.
The meeting you referred to when you heard opposition, are you referring to a month ago, the neighborhood meeting, or when it went before a planning ordinance a couple of years ago?
It was at the neighborhood meeting, and that was at the point where there was a lot of, you know, back and forth between people who really were in favor, people who were really against it. So at that point I said to the folks, okay, the folks who are opposed to this, tell me what really bothers you about this particular store opening. And that's when we got into the discussion about really, I believe beside the fact that change is difficult, okay? It changed when the store closed, and some people were unhappy, but it's been very quiet there, okay? It is a difficult intersection. I will not dispute that with anyone. I had barrels out there trying to slow the speed of people coming around the corner because they crash into houses. So in addition to the additional activity from a vehicular point of view that will be caused by the store opening, there is definitely a traffic concern in that area. I have been working with Yemlip, our city engineer, to try to come up with a plan to try to mitigate some of the traffic concerns that are caused in that particular roadway. I'm not going to lie and say that the convenience store being closed, has been good for that piece. It has. More traffic activity will increase the issues in that particular curve. That's I believe a true statement. But as I said, I am working with the city engineer. We're looking at maybe getting this particular area into the Complete Streets program. And we also talked last week just about the barrels have, I'm digressing here a little bit, but the barrels have helped slow down traffic. That is, most of the residents will agree with that. And it's also shown us the traffic pattern of in and out from the side streets. And we're actually talking, Jim and I have been Lip and I have been talking about actually putting in, if you go you see the bike lanes, you'll see poles that actually, when you snowplow, they go down and they come back up. We're actually talking about looking at implementing some of these poles in that area that would replace the barrels. So,
My second question.
yes, I'm sorry. Sorry.
What was the motivation to the attempt to change to residency? Was that specifically to address the property we're discussing?
Yes, it was.
And how wide was the?
It was wide. It went. I don't know the exact area, but it also we actually had Melrose aldermen at the meeting, voting against it. Someone could actually, with the price of homes these days, if they bought up the homes, they would have the right to put in a 3-story apartment.
But the zoning change that was going to impact multiple was singularly for that property?
I would say whether it was singularly for that property or not, it came to us, and it would have allowed that property to reopen, which was not something that as a counselor I could support, because I believe that was detrimental to the neighborhood. And I bring that up because I believe that leaving this property vacant is detrimental to the neighborhood. And I would think that this is a much better solution than the prior.
We have various forms of detriment.
We have various forms of detriment. Yes. Thank you.
Anyone else to speak in favor?
Hi, good evening. My name is Carol Desiderio. I live at 440 Lebanon Street. I'm not a direct abutter, but I'm diagonally across the street from the store. We miss having a store in the neighborhood, and I don't want to be repetitive to what was already stated in those very well-written letters of support that you read earlier tonight, but I wanted to come on record as being in support of opening the store.
So the list, we the neighbors of the In-N-Out convenience store are opposed to the store being reopened. So we have, and I apologize if I can't read the writing, but it looks like at 446 Lebanon Street, the Hineses, John and Kathleen. At 444 Lebanon, Maureen. Sorry, I just can't read the writing. 446 Singer, Richard Singer. 424 Lebanon, Ken Croffins. At 424 Lebanon, Sebastian Paquette. At 410 Lebanon, Corey Enright. 413 Lebanon, Dave Brogat. 487 Lebanon, Claire Shanley. 6 Morton Ave, Richard Osterland. 6 Morton Ave, Priscilla, Australian. 512 Lebanon Street, Robert Palouse. And also at 512, Terry Luz Calusi. 4 Wilbur Street, cannot read the name. 2 Wilbur Street, Malalda Poloni. 6 Morton Ave, another Australian, Megan. And 24 Marshall Street, both Barbara and Richard Purcell. Again, I apologize for any mispronunciations. And then we had one lengthy letter from a resident. This would be from Mr. Neil Kinnan, 11 Spruce Street. I write to you regarding the docket items in front of you regarding parcel number 138788806, Malden, Lebanon Street, Malden, Mass, requesting variance under ordinance chapter 12, section 800-4-1-3 and section 700.1.5. I am opposed to providing these variances for the following reasons. The petitioner came before the Malden Planning Board over a year ago, after having his store closed for well over 2 years, acknowledging the zoning ordinance and that he had exceeded the 2-year requirement, parentheses, nearly 3 at the time, close parentheses, of section 700.1.5 of chapter 12, and thus was attempting to have an entire section of Lebanon Street rezoned in order to allow him to reopen his former store instead. It was an attempt at an end around, but the majority of the people in attendance opposed that evening. He was rejected by the planning board. Point 2, having been rejected under the attempt in front of the planning board, and given that his initial rejection for zoning change occurred over a year ago, and the fact the petitioner clearly at that time claimed that all was cleaned up, he should further be rejected in his appeal before the Board of Appeal, as another year plus has gone by and nothing was done, when obviously no hardship existed nearly a year and a half ago. Time for an appeal on this situation at any time after the 2 years is dubious at best, but after nearly 5 years, which was stated in his meeting held at the store location in the last few weeks of December, seems way beyond the point of reason if Malden is to ever uphold this ordinance in the future. Point 3. Further, under chapter 12, section 800.4.9, I believe either of the variances must be rejected, given as an unfavorable action regarding this parcel was already determined in zoning, and the fact that it was denied reopening due to the current ordinance regarding 2 years lapsing, regarding 2 years having elapsed, which the petitioner acknowledged in front of the planning board when it applied to rezone, and again in the meeting with the neighbors on December 12th, 2018. YouTube video, which I sent to Chairman O'Brien, see petitioner attorney's statement, had 2 minutes, 15 seconds, 2:30 of the video. Chapter 12, section 800.4-9 states that given an unfavorable action, unless after serving notice to the parties of interest at the time and place of the proceedings, 8 of the 9 members of the planning board consent thereto. This has not occurred. 4, it has been stated in meetings with residents, see YouTube video, that this property cannot be effectively used as anything. In fact, it could certainly be turned into an apartment or 2 with variances granted for that. This has indeed occurred at similar business properties in the recent past. One example comes to mind at 840 Main Street that was formerly Yankee Pest Control on the corner of Winter and Main Street. It is now a residential dwelling with only 1,507 square feet of land in a far larger convertible building. The idea that nobody would live there is simply not factual. Finally, as I write to you as a former councilor who spoke against changing the zoning and reopening this store after 2 years at the planning board meeting, where the attempted rezoning of the area was defeated. I have great concern as a citizen that granting this entity a variance so long past the 2 years will have far-reaching unintended consequences for issues that have come before the planning board and the appeals board in the past. For instance, the Malden hospital site. And if granted, this will set a precedent, partly because the time elapsed is so long that legal challenges will be extremely difficult to defeat given the subjective nature of overriding the current 2-year limit based upon one person's hardship. The appeals board is likely to put the city and itself into a situation of testifying as to why one person's subjective hardship, to go beyond 2 years, is not equivalent to another person's subjective hardship. A situation for those who have ever testified in court. One does not wish to be in that position. I appreciate the difficulty of your job and the work that you folks do. And that's signed by Neil Kinnan, 11 Spruce Street. That is the written information I received, and now we would ask if there's any folks that would like to speak. Again, this is in opposition to the variance.
Hi, my name is Sarah Lieberman. I live at 3 Swains Pond Ave in Melrose, Malden, 33 Malden. I just want to say I'm not opposed to the store opening. When I moved in the neighborhood, the store was there and it was fine. I'm only up here to say that if the store reopens, I'm just concerned about security. Because there was, you know, a lot of people like to rob convenience stores and the security in the neighborhood, that's all. I'm not opposed to it opening again. When I moved in the neighborhood, it was there, and that's fine. You know, live and let live, but that's all I want to say, is that I hope security is.
And would it be a comfort and acceptable with, we've heard from the counselor, the attorney,
No, I know the
and from Chief Molis's
right.
recommendation for some cameras to be.
Absolutely, but I know that, I don't know why convenience stores are such a target for people to rob, but
Right.
I remember over the years there have been definitely, unfortunately, break-ins in the store and stuff. And I'm sure after they do their business, they leave the neighborhood, but being in the neighborhood, that's just a concern of mine about, you know. Anyway, but that's fine. So I'm not saying the store shouldn't reopen or anything like that.
Thank you for
Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Board members, any other questions or comments? And again, no one else to speak? Okay. Anyone make a motion?
Are we going to handle these separately?
My thought was to address, yes, my thought was to address initially the building inspectors, the request by the petitioner, I should say, to overturn the building inspector's ruling, and then depending on the result of that, whether we would need to go forward and give consideration to the other petition.
That on that regard, we're handling that one first about his decision. I think that basically that we support his decision not to grant a permit based on the evidence that he had before.
Okay, so if you're speaking to the mic, you would be making a motion to support the building inspector and not overturning his decision?
Based on the evidence that he had.
The evidence that the building inspector had. Okay. And would there be a second?
I actually want to kind of amend that a bit. I think it's based on the evidence that we find, based on the rule. I don't think Nelson made a determination on that one way or the other. So I think it's really based on the evidence.
Other than the fact that he didn't issue a permit to the applicant.
We can just cut that part off. Based on his decision. Yeah. We support his decision.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, so we have a vote of 5-0 to uphold the building inspector's decision. And now we can entertain the other petition that was submitted, and would there be a motion? Anyone entertain a motion on that one?
And then we can discuss it a little bit, but I mean, I think, based on what we've heard here tonight, this is a unique situation. It may not be necessarily, some of it is related to the land in one sense, but some of it is beyond everyone's control here. And that the length of time, maybe we heard from the attorney, this is a long motion. Let me just make the motion instead of making comments. I'd like to move that we grant a variance and allow for them to reopen the store.
With conditions?
With conditions, which would be the three that they've already agreed to, which is to have the trash at least 3 times per day, that the video surveillance be installed,
that's acceptable
to Chief Mollis.
Okay.
And that they at no time would the store apply for a liquor license.
Yeah, you know, and I meant to ask that question if the gentleman had applied in the past at all. I know I did hear that someone applied in the past, but was it our petitioner?
It was, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
So he was denied, so.
Okay.
And he's agreeing now not to further the
Okay.
any.
All right. And Councilor Murphy, you had a comment?
Yes, I'm terribly sorry.
No.
There was also one other condition that was not mentioned this evening
Oh, please.
that just came to mind, and I'm sorry I didn't have my notes in front of me.
Would that be the hours?
It was the hours.
Yeah.
Yes, that.
I did watch YouTube.
The store, there was concern that the store closed at 9 o'clock and not be open until 10 or 11.
I think I had a birthday yesterday, so my memory.
Thank you, I'm
I
sorry.
think I heard 9 p.m.
Yeah, 9 p.m.,
Is
yes.
that everyone? So,
Yes, thank you, I'm sorry.
someone raising their hand? Someone want to speak? No, okay. I thought I heard 9 p.m. at your meeting.
Yeah, my apologies to Councilor Murphy and the board. That was a condition that was discussed.
Right, I remember you agreed that it
It
was.
is agreed to by the
Yeah.
petitioners.
So John,
And business hours don't extend beyond 9 p.m.
okay, and that's all 7 days, or days that you're open. And there was a number of hardships that were mentioned in lot size and both in configuration and for size of it, lack of parking. A second?
Hello.
I'll second, okay. And all those in favor? I'm in favor. Adam?
No, I'm opposed.
Okay, so it's granted by a vote of 4-1 with those conditions. So we ended up with 4, red security system, no liquor application, store hours, and trash policing.
That's correct.
Okay? All right, thank you, folks. Pat, I'm going to give you a little break, and I'm going to do our other hearing now, the sign, and then we'll do your other. Okay. We'll take a minute and the pastor for the sign.